Captain Dae-ho Kim felt his stomach twist as the ship shook violently. The blue light outside the window suddenly turned normal again. Space looked right now. Stars twinkled in their proper places, but something felt wrong. Navigator So-min, where are we? Dae-ho asked, gripping his chair. So-min Park looked at her screens with wide eyes. Captain, this is impossible. We're near New Busan Colony, but according to my readings, we've been gone for 73 years. The bridge went quiet. Engineer Jin-Woo Lee stopped working on his control panel. Communications Officer Yoo-Jin Choi turned around slowly. That can't be right, Jin-Woo said. We only entered that strange space bubble yesterday. Dae-ho walked to the main viewing screen. New Busan should be busy with ships and space stations. Instead, he saw broken metal floating in space. The colony looked dead. Yoo-Jin, try to contact New Busan Control, Dae-ho ordered. Yoo-Jin worked on her controls for several minutes. Captain, I'm getting nothing. No signals at all. Take us closer, So-min. The ship moved toward what used to be a thriving human colony. As they got closer, the damage became clear. Buildings were torn apart. Ships were crashed into the station walls. Everything looked old and abandoned. Captain, Jin-Woo said quietly. I'm reading some life signs from the lower levels of New Seoul Station. Very faint. Just one person? Yes, sir. Deep in the research section. Dae-ho made his decision quickly. So-min, dock us carefully. Jin-Woo, Yoo-Jin, you're with me. We're going to find out what happened here. The inside of New Seoul Station was dark and cold. Their boots echoed in the empty hallways. Broken glass covered the floors. Old bloodstains marked the walls. Whatever happened here was violent. They followed Jin-Woo's scanner deeper into the station. The life sign was coming from the science labs at the bottom level. As they walked, Dae-ho noticed something strange. The damage looked selective. Someone had specifically destroyed human technology while leaving basic life support systems working. This way, Jin-Woo whispered, pointing down a long corridor. At the end of the hall, they found a sealed door. Yoo-Jin worked on the lock while the others waited. When it opened, warm air rushed out. Inside, a small woman looked up from a pile of old books and computer parts. Humans? She said, her voice shaking. Real humans? Yes, Dae-ho said gently. I'm Captain Dae-ho Kim. What's your name? Haewon Shin, Dr. Haewon Shin. I've been hiding here for so long. Tears ran down her face. I thought you were all dead. What happened here? Where is everyone? Haewon stood up slowly. She was thin and looked tired. The hegemony came 3 months after you disappeared. They said humans were enemies of galactic peace. They took everything. Our colonies, our technology, our people. Disappeared? So-min asked. We didn't disappear. We went into that space anomaly yesterday. Time moves differently there, Haewon explained. The government knew it would happen. They sent exploration ships like yours to learn about technologies beyond this galaxy. We needed to become stronger. Why? Dae-ho asked. Because we knew this would happen. The Veltar and Kethra were planning to take over the galaxy. Human intelligence services discovered their plans. So the government sent ships to find help. Yoo-Jin checked her scanner. Captain, I'm reading multiple ships approaching. They're not human. Hegemony Patrol, Haewon said, fear in her voice. They check this area sometimes, looking for survivors. How many ships? Dae-ho asked. 6 heavy cruisers, Yoo-Jin replied. They'll be here in 10 minutes. Dae-ho felt calm. This was what they had trained for during their time in the anomaly. Haewon, can you walk? Yes, but Captain, you don't understand. Those ships have enough firepower to destroy small planets. You can't fight them with one exploration vessel. We'll see about that. They hurried back to the Mugunghwa. Once everyone was aboard, Dae-ho took his position on the bridge. The alien ships appeared on their screens, large and threatening. They looked like metal insects with glowing red weapon ports. This is Hegemony Commander Vextar, a harsh voice said over the radio. Surrender immediately. Humans are forbidden in this sector. This is Captain Dae-ho Kim of Earth, Dae-ho replied. We don't recognize your authority. Then you will be destroyed. The alien ships fired red energy beams at the Mugunghwa. Haewon closed her eyes, waiting for death. But the beams hit something invisible around the human ship and simply disappeared. Impossible, the alien commander said. Jin-Woo, show them what we learned, Dae-ho ordered. Jin-Woo smiled and pressed several buttons. The Mugunghwa suddenly moved faster than anything should move in normal space. It appeared behind the alien fleet in seconds. Blue energy weapons fired from the human ship. The alien weapons couldn't touch the human ship, but the human weapons passed right through the alien armor. One by one, the hegemony ships exploded. In less than 5 minutes, all 6 were destroyed. How? One whispered. We met beings from outside this galaxy, Somin explained. They taught us things. How to bend space. How to make our weapons ignore matter. How to protect ourselves from any energy attack. The hegemony has ruled the galaxy for 70 years, Haywan said. They have billions of ships. They control hundreds of worlds. Not anymore, Deho said firmly. Eugene, send a message on all human emergency frequencies. Tell any survivors that humanity has returned. Tell them we're stronger now. What's the message, Captain? Deho looked out at the destroyed alien ships floating in space. Tell them the galaxy is about to change. The hegemony thought they could erase us. They were wrong. As Eugene sent the message across the galaxy, Haywan began to smile for the first time in decades. She looked at the impossible human ship and its confident crew. What happens now? She asked. Now we find out exactly what the hegemony has been doing, Deho said, and then we make them pay for every human life they took. The Mugungwa turned away from the dead colony and headed toward the inner galaxy. Behind them, the wreckage of hegemony ships served as the first warning that humanity was back. And they were no longer the weak species that had fled 73 years ago. The galaxy was about to learn what humans could become when they were pushed too far. 3 days after the fight at New Seoul Station, the Mugunghwa received an encrypted message. The signal came from deep space from a region called the Void Reaches. Most species avoided that area because space itself was unstable there. Captain, Eugene said, the message is definitely human. It's Admiral Miran Jang. Deho felt relief wash over him. Miran had been his commanding officer before the anomaly mission. Put her through. An older woman's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired but strong. Captain Kim, it's good to see you alive. We've been waiting. Admiral, how many of us made it out? More than you might think. Follow these coordinates. But be careful. The Void Reaches can destroy normal ships. We're not normal anymore. Deho replied with a small smile. The journey to the Void Reaches took 2 days. As they traveled, Haywan told them more about what happened after humanity disappeared. The hegemony had enslaved dozens of species. They forced others to work in terrible conditions. Any species that resisted was wiped out completely. The crystalline Zerth tried to fight back 5 years ago, Haywan explained. The hegemony captured their homeworld and used their people for experiments. What kind of experiments? Somin asked. They wanted to understand how different species' abilities work. The Zerth can communicate through crystal resonance. The energy beings called Nulani can phase through matter. The hegemony steals these abilities for their own use. When they reached the coordinates and space around them began to ripple like water. Colors that shouldn't exist flashed outside the windows. But the Mugungwa moved through it all safely. There, Jin Woo pointed ahead. A massive space station hung in the twisted space of the Void Reaches. It was bigger than most cities. Around it, hundreds of human ships moved in formation. But these weren't the ships Deho remembered. They looked alien and beautiful, made of materials that seemed to bend light. Welcome to Haven Station, Admiral Miran's voice said over the radio. Population 2 million humans and growing. As they docked, Deho saw that the station was full of life. Children ran through the corridors. Adults worked on technologies he didn't recognize. Gardens grew under artificial suns. Humanity hadn't just survived in exile. They had built a new civilization. Admiral Miran met them at the docking bay. She was shorter than Deho remembered, but her eyes were sharper. Captain, we need to talk. All of you. She led them to a conference room where other officers waited. Commander Tae-hyun-oh stood at attention. His skin had a slight blue tint and his eyes glowed faintly. Dr. Soo-young Kim sat at the table. Her hair now silver despite being young. The anomalies changed us, Miran explained when she saw their surprised looks. Our bodies adapted to survive in impossible environments. Taehyun can breathe in vacuum now. Soo-young can see quantum patterns with her naked eyes. What did we become? Deho asked. Something better, something stronger, but we're still human where it matters. Miran activated a holographic display. While we were learning from beings beyond this galaxy, the hegemony was busy destroying everything we cared about. The display showed dozens of worlds, former human colonies now stripped bare. Other species' homeworlds turned into factory planets. Billions of beings worked as slaves to feed the hegemony's war machine. But we're not the only ones who want the hegemony gone, Dr. Su-young said. She touched a control and new images appeared. I've been working with resistance groups across the galaxy. The images showed different alien species fighting back in small ways. Earth crystal beings hiding in asteroid fields. Nilani energy forms disrupting hegemony computers. Other species helping where they could. The problem is coordination, Taehyun said. The hegemony controls all communication. Resistance groups can't work together. That's about to change, Miran said firmly. Daeho, your ship proved something important. Our new technology works. The hegemony can't fight what they can't understand. What's the plan, Admiral? We're going to start liberating prisoner camps. But not just human prisoners. Every species the hegemony has enslaved. Dr. Su-young pulled up a new display. There's a research facility in the Kepler sector. The hegemony is holding 300 Zerth there. They're using them to understand crystal communication technology. I'll take the mission, Taehyun volunteered. No, Miran said. This needs someone with fleet command experience. Commander Kyung-ho Bae will lead this operation. A tall man with calm eyes stepped forward. I'll need a team that can handle close combat in hostile environments. You'll have it, Miran promised. But this mission is about more than rescue. We need to understand what the hegemony is really doing. The next day, Daeho watched as Commander Kyung-ho's ships left Haven Station. They moved through the void reaches like fish swimming through water, completely unaffected by the space distortions that would destroy normal vessels. How do our ships work now? Daeho asked Jinwoo. The beings we met taught us to think differently about reality, Jinwoo explained. Matter, energy, space, time, they're all just different forms of the same thing. Our ships exist in multiple dimensions at once. And our weapons? They don't destroy matter. They convince matter to be somewhere else. 3 days later, Kyung-ho's team returned. They brought back the rescued Zerth, crystal beings who communicated through beautiful chiming sounds. But they also brought back something terrible. Admiral, Kyung-ho reported, it's worse than we thought. The hegemony isn't just studying alien abilities. They're harvesting them. He showed recordings from the facility, Zerth beings connected to machines that drained their crystal essence. The essence was then injected into hegemony soldiers, giving them the ability to communicate without speaking. They're stealing what makes each species unique, Dr. Su-young said, her face pale. This isn't conquest. It's absorption. One of the rescued Zerth, whose crystal body rang like a bell when it moved, managed to speak through a translation device. The Veltar showed us recordings. They have humans too. They study your new abilities. The room went silent. Miran's hands clenched into fists. Where? The core worlds. They want to understand your quantum consciousness. They want to steal your ability to bend reality. Miran stood up slowly. Then we're not just fighting for freedom anymore. We're fighting for the right to exist as ourselves. She looked around the room at her officers, at the rescued Zerth, at the recordings of hegemony crimes. Send messages to every resistance group Dr. Su-young has contacted. Tell them humanity is ready to fight. Tell them we're not just reclaiming our territory. What's the real message, Admiral? Daeho asked. Tell them we're going to liberate the entire galaxy. Every enslaved world, every captured being, every stolen essence. We're taking it all back. The Zerth being chimed in agreement, its crystal body glowing brighter. Other alien refugees in the room made sounds of hope in their own languages. Outside the station, human ships began preparing for war. But this wouldn't be the same kind of war the galaxy had seen before. This would be a war fought with technologies that made the impossible real, led by humans who had learned to rewrite the laws of physics themselves. The hegemony had spent 70 years believing they were the strongest force in the galaxy. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The hegemony's response came faster than expected. Supreme Commander Graxtel himself led a fleet of 500 ships toward the void reaches. He was the most feared military leader in the galaxy. The Veltar, who had conquered 47 star systems without losing a single battle. Impossible humans hiding in dead space, Graxtal growled to his officers. We will crush them like insects. But when his fleet reached the void reaches, they found empty space. The human station was gone. No ships, no debris, nothing. Commander, we're receiving a transmission, his communications officer reported. Put it through. Admiral Miran's face appeared on the screen. Behind her, Graxtal could see the human station. somehow operating normally in the twisted space around them. "Supreme Commander," Miran said politely, "we thought you might want to discuss terms." "Terms?" Graxtal's serpentine features twisted in anger. "Humans will surrender or be destroyed." "I don't think you understand your situation," Miran replied. "Your ships can't operate safely in the void reaches ours can. You're trapped between dimensions you can't navigate." Graxtal looked at his tactical display. Several of his ships were already showing hull stress from the space distortions. "We have enough firepower to destroy entire planets. But you can't hit what exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously." To prove her point, human ships suddenly appeared around Graxtal's fleet. They seemed to flicker in and out of reality, never staying solid long enough for weapons to lock onto them. "Retreat," Graxtal ordered. "Back to normal space." As his fleet withdrew, he tried to understand what he had seen. The humans had technology that made no sense. Ships that could exist and not exist at the same time. Weapons that passed through shields like they weren't there. Meanwhile, aboard Haven Station, Engineer Dongmin Park was explaining the real secret of human advancement to Daeho and his crew. "We don't use artificial intelligence," Dongmin said, leading them through the engineering section. "We use something better." "What's better than AI?" Somin asked. "Human consciousness linked directly to quantum computers." Dongmin pointed to a chamber filled with soft blue light. "Our ships don't just have computers. They have human minds connected to quantum processing systems." "That sounds dangerous," Jinwoo said. "The opposite. Human intuition combined with quantum calculation creates something neither could achieve alone. Our ships can think, feel, and react faster than any AI, but they still understand concepts like mercy and sacrifice." Dr. Hae-won, who had been quiet during the tour, finally spoke. "The beings you met in the anomaly, they taught you this." "They taught us that consciousness is the most powerful force in the universe," Dongmin replied. "Matter follows thought. Energy follows intention. Once you understand that, you can change reality itself." The next demonstration came from Captain Yoonji Lee, who commanded a stealth ship called the Invisible Wind. Her mission was to infiltrate the hegemony's central database on their capital, world. "Phase drive ready," her pilot reported. "Engage." The ship didn't disappear. Instead, it became something that existed in several dimensions at once. To any observer, it would look like a shadow that might or might not be there. They traveled through hegemony space undetected. Patrol ships passed right through them. Defense satellites scanned empty space while the human ship moved between layers of reality. The hegemony capital was a massive world covered in metal cities. Billions of beings from hundreds of species worked in factories and mines. The inequality was shocking. Veltar lived in floating palaces while everyone else struggled in the industrial levels below. "There," Yoonji pointed to a tower that reached into orbit. "The central data core." Her team phased through the tower's walls like ghosts. Inside, they found rooms full of quantum computers managing the entire hegemony. But they also found something horrible. "Captain," her science officer whispered, "these aren't just records. They're plans." The computers contained detailed blueprints for harvesting Earth's quantum signature. The hegemony wanted to drain Earth's dimensional energy to power weapons that could reshape reality itself. "They're planning to turn Earth into a quantum battery," Yoonji realized. "They want to use our homeworld to fuel their ultimate conquest." But that wasn't the worst discovery. The records showed that the hegemony had been systematically destroying species' unique traits for decades. The Veltar's natural shapeshifting ability had been stolen from another species they'd wiped out. The Kethra's hive mind was artificial, forced onto them by hegemony surgery. "The entire hegemony is built on theft," the science officer said. "They have no original abilities of their own." Meanwhile, back on Haven Station, biologist In-Soo Yoon was making his own discoveries about human evolution. The exposure to extra-dimensional energies had changed humanity at the genetic level. "We can process multiple probability streams at once," In-Soo explained to Admiral Miran. "A normal human brain works in linear time. Ours work in quantum time. What does that mean practically? We can see what's likely to happen before it happens. We can make decisions based on probabilities that haven't occurred yet. We're not just predicting the future when we're choosing which future becomes real." This ability was about to be tested. Supreme Commander Graxtal had assembled the largest fleet in hegemony history. 8,000 ships surrounded the Rigel Nexus, a vital trading hub that the humans had been harassing. If they want to play games with dimensional technology, Graxtal snarled, we'll show them what real firepower can do. But the human response was unexpected. Only one ship approached the massive hegemony fleet, the dreadnought Aguka, commanded by Captain Boram Song. One ship against 8,000, Graxtal laughed. Humans have finally lost their minds. All ships fire at will, he ordered. 8,000 ships fired simultaneously. The energy output was enough to crack a moon. But when the light faded, the human ship was still there, completely undamaged. How? One of his officers whispered. Captain Boram's voice came over the communications channel, calm and confident. Supreme Commander, you're using our energy against us. Every shot you fire makes us stronger. It was true. The Aguka was absorbing the hegemony weapons fire and converting it to power. But more than that, it was learning from each attack, adapting its defenses in real time. Impossible, Graxtal said. Your technology is based on stolen abilities, Boram replied. You understand pieces, but not the whole. Watch and learn. The Aguka fired a single shot, but this wasn't a normal weapon. The energy beam seemed to convince the hegemony ships that they wanted to be somewhere else. One by one, enemy vessels simply relocated themselves to random points in space. In less than 10 minutes, the entire hegemony fleet was scattered across 3 star systems. Ships that had been in perfect formation were now lost in the void, their crews trying to figure out where they were. This is impossible, Graxtal said again, but his voice was shaking now. This is what happens when you fight beings who can rewrite reality, Boram replied. Your weapons work on matter and energy. Ours work on the quantum code that tells matter and energy how to behave. The message spread across the galaxy within hours. The mighty hegemony fleet, the largest military force ever assembled, had been defeated by a single human ship without a single death on either side. On worlds throughout hegemony space, enslaved beings looked up at the sky and began to hope. Resistance cells activated secret communication networks. Species that had hidden for decades began to emerge from their refuges. Admiral Miran received thousands of messages from across the galaxy. The same question appeared over and over. When do we fight back? Her answer was broadcast on every frequency, in every language. Now. The revolution began on 47 worlds simultaneously. On each planet, beings who had suffered under hegemony rule for decades suddenly had hope. More importantly, they had help. General Wu Jin Choi coordinated the uprising from a mobile command center that existed partially outside normal space. His holographic display showed resistance movements across half the galaxy, each one now equipped with simplified versions of human quantum technology. Zerth crystal resonators are disrupting hegemony communications on their homeworld, reported his aide. The crystalline beings can now amplify their natural abilities using our quantum field generators. What about the Nulani? They're phasing through hegemony security barriers on 6 systems. Our reality anchors let them control exactly where they materialize. Wu Jin smiled grimly. The hegemony had spent decades studying these species' abilities to steal them. Now those same abilities, enhanced by human technology, were being used to tear the hegemony apart from within. On the crystal world of Zer Prime, the leader known as Crystal Song of Defiance led her people in their first free action in 30 years. The hegemony had built massive mining platforms to harvest crystal essence directly from the planet's surface. Sisters and brothers, she chimed, her crystal body resonating with pure determination. Today we reclaim our world. The Zerth had never been warriors. Their culture was based on harmony and resonance. But when Crystal Song of Defiance activated the quantum resonator that General Wu Jin's team had provided, something beautiful happened. Every crystal being on the planet sang together. Their combined voice, amplified by human technology, created vibrations that the hegemony mining platforms couldn't withstand. The metal structures didn't explode. They simply fell apart, their molecular bonds disrupted by the perfect harmonic frequency. Hegemony guards fired their weapons, but the energy beams passed harmlessly through the crystal beings. The Zerth had learned to phase between dimensions, becoming solid only when they chose to be. Meanwhile, in the insect factories of Keth Secundus, something even more remarkable was happening. The worker caste Kethra had lived under the absolute control of their queen caste for generations. The queens used pheromone control to make the workers completely obedient. But Dr. Yejin Han had spent months studying Kethra biology. She discovered that the hive mind control was artificial, implanted by hegemony scientists to make the species easier to manage. The quantum field disruptors will block the pheromone signals, she explained to the worker caste leaders. For the first time in your lives, your thoughts will be your own. When the human technology activated, millions of Kethra workers suddenly experienced individual consciousness. The feeling was overwhelming: joy, anger, confusion, and above all rage at what had been done to them. The uprising on Keth Secundus lasted exactly 17 minutes. Worker caste Kethra had spent their lives building weapons and ships for the hegemony. They knew exactly where the critical systems were located. By the time the Queen caste realized what was happening, their palace was surrounded by millions of liberated workers. But the real test of human capability came when the hegemony deployed their most terrible weapon. Supreme Commander Graxtal, growing desperate as world after world slipped from his control, authorized the use of the Life Harvester. The weapon was a massive ship that could drain the life energy from entire planets to power itself. It had been used only 3 times before, always to make examples of rebellious worlds. Each time, billions had died in seconds. Target New Incheon, Graxtal ordered. The humans' newest colony will show the galaxy what happens to those who defy us. The Life Harvester approached New Incheon slowly, its dark hull absorbing light from nearby stars. The weapon's charging process was visible from space, tendrils of dark energy reaching out toward the planet's surface. But as the weapon fired, something unexpected happened. Instead of draining the planet's life force, the energy beam struck an invisible barrier around New Incheon. The harvested energy was absorbed, redirected, and sent back at the hegemony fleet. Commander Jaemin Kang had deployed quantum siphon arrays around every human world. The technology didn't just defend against energy weapons, it turned them into power sources for human systems. Impossible, Graxtal whispered, as his fleet's own weapons were turned against them. The Life Harvester, powered by the energy it had tried to steal, began tearing itself apart. "This is Commander Jaemin Kang," a calm voice said over the hegemony communications channel. "Your weapon is now charging our planetary defense grid. Thank you for the energy donation." The psychological impact was devastating. The hegemony's ultimate weapon hadn't just failed, it had made their enemies stronger. Across the galaxy, hegemony forces began to surrender rather than face humans who could turn any attack into an advantage. But the liberation of the Zirith homeworld provided an even more stunning demonstration of human capabilities. When Admiral Sung-Ho Park's fleet arrived at Zur Prime, they found a world dying from decades of strip mining. The crystalline beings had evolved with their planet over millions of years. Their life force was connected to the crystal formations deep beneath the surface. The hegemony mining had severed those connections, slowly killing both the planet and its people. "Can your people survive without the crystal network?" Admiral Sung-Ho asked Crystal Song of Defiance. "Not for long," she chimed sadly. "We are becoming less than ourselves each day. Then we'll fix it." What happened next amazed even the humans who witnessed it. Admiral Sung-Ho's ships didn't attack the remaining hegemony forces on the planet. Instead, they began working with the quantum structure of the world itself. Human quantum environmental technology could accelerate natural healing processes. Where the hegemony had torn crystal formations from the planet's crust, new crystals began growing at impossible speeds. Damaged ecosystems regenerated in hours instead of centuries. How? Crystal Song of Defiance asked, her entire body glowing with renewed life as the planet's crystal network restored itself. "We learned that consciousness shapes reality," Admiral Sung-Ho explained. "Your people's collective will to heal your world, amplified by our technology, makes it happen." The sight of a dying world returning to life spread across the galaxy faster than any military victory could have. Species that had given up hope began to believe that their own homeworlds could be restored. But perhaps the most important victory came on a small industrial world called Vel Tertius. Commander Jaemin Kang had developed a new type of weapon, reality-anchoring fields that could prevent alien species from using their natural abilities. When his ships surrounded the planet, the Veltar defenders prepared for a normal battle. They tried to shapeshift to avoid human weapons. But nothing happened. Within the human reality anchors, shapeshifting simply didn't work. "Your natural abilities have been temporarily disabled," Jamin announced to the confused Veltar forces. This is what every other species has experienced under your rule, the inability to be what they truly are. Kethra hive minds found themselves thinking as individuals. Energy beings became solid. Crystalline entities couldn't resonate with each other. For the first time, the hegemony species experienced what they had done to others. But instead of using this advantage to destroy their enemies, the humans did something unexpected. They offered medical aid to Veltar who were injured during the fighting. They provided food to Kethra workers whose queens had abandoned them. Why help us? A wounded Veltar officer asked Dr. Yejin-Han as she treated his injuries. Because this war isn't about revenge, she replied. It's about freedom. Your freedom too. The officer looked confused. But we enslaved your people. You were enslaved first. The hegemony system made you into something you weren't meant to be. As the reality anchor field stabilized around Vel Tertius, something remarkable happened. Without their artificial enhancements and stolen abilities, many hegemony species began remembering who they had been before the conquest. The aggressive nature that made the Veltar such effective conquerors wasn't entirely natural. It had been amplified by parasitic organisms that the hegemony leadership had used to control their own people. The revolution was no longer humans versus aliens. It was free beings versus a system that had corrupted everyone it touched. Supreme Commander Graxtal, watching his empire crumble from his fortress on Vel Prime, finally understood what he was truly fighting. These weren't the weak humans who had fled 73 years ago. These were beings who had learned to heal reality itself, and they were coming for him. The final battle began not with violence but with an invitation. Admiral Mi Ranjiang's fleet appeared at the edge of the Vel Prime system. Not hundreds of ships as expected, but thousands. Each vessel was a masterpiece of impossible engineering, existing in multiple dimensions while somehow remaining solid enough to be seen. Supreme Commander Graxtal looked at his tactical displays and felt fear for the first time in his life. His homeworld was protected by the most powerful defense grid ever built. Energy shields that could stop planet-killer weapons. Automated defense platforms that could track targets across star systems. The combined firepower of 10,000 ships. None of it mattered against an enemy that could rewrite the laws of physics. This is Admiral Mi Ranjiang to Supreme Commander Graxtal. The human leader's voice was calm, almost gentle. We need to talk. Talk? Graxtal's serpentine features twisted in confusion. You come with a fleet to conquer my world and want to talk? We come with a fleet to offer you a choice, Miran replied. The same choice we've offered every world we've liberated. Join us in building something better, or continue fighting a war you cannot win. On the bridge of the human flagship, Taegukgi, Captain Daeho Kim watched the enemy fleet positioning itself for battle. Beside him, Engineer Dongmin Park monitored the ship's quantum consciousness systems. The ship's AI wants to know if we should deploy dimensional cascade weapons, Dongmin reported. Not yet, Daeho replied. Let's see if they'll listen to reason first. But reasoning with the hegemony leadership had never worked before. Supreme Commander Graxtal had built his entire identity around conquest and domination. The idea of cooperation was foreign to him. All ships attack formation, Graxtal ordered. We will crush these human insects once and for all. The hegemony fleet fired everything they had. Energy beams, kinetic missiles, gravity bombs, quantum torpedoes. Weapons that could destroy entire solar systems unleashed their fury on the human fleet. The attack lasted for 3 minutes. When the energy cleared, every human ship was still there, completely undamaged. How? Graxtal whispered. Captain Daeho's voice came over the communication channel, patient and educational. Supreme Commander, you're still thinking about this wrong. You see weapons and shields, attack and defense. We see energy patterns that can be redirected, convinced to be something else. To demonstrate, the Taegukgi fired a single shot at the largest hegemony battleship. But the weapon didn't destroy the enemy vessel. Instead, the battleship simply found itself on the other side of the galaxy, completely unharmed but utterly lost. We moved your ship to a peaceful system near some lovely gardens, Daeho explained. Your crew can think about what they really want to do with their lives while they find their way home. One by one, hegemony ships began to disappear, not destroyed, but relocated to random, non-threatening locations throughout the galaxy. Their crews were alive and safe, but the fleet was effectively neutralized without a single death. This is impossible, Graxtel said for what felt like the thousandth time. This is what happens when you fight people who understand that reality is collaborative, not competitive, Admiral Miran replied. Your entire philosophy is based on taking things by force. Ours is based on convincing the universe to cooperate. As the last hegemony ship vanished from the battlefield, something unexpected happened. A transmission came from the planet's surface, not from the military command center, but from the civilian population. Human fleet. This is Dr. Velani Kess from the Vel Prime Medical Center, a female Veltar voice said, shaking with emotion. We've been monitoring your broadcast to other worlds. Is it true? Can you help us? Captain Deho looked surprised. Help you with what, Doctor? The parasites. The control organisms that the leadership uses to make us aggressive. We've known about them for years, but we were too afraid to act. Can you really remove them? This was news to both the humans and to Supreme Commander Graxtal. Dr. Hyojin Lee, the human psychologist who had studied hegemony biology, immediately requested permission to beam down to the planet. Graxtal, Admiral Miran said, did you know your own people were being controlled by parasites? The Supreme Commander's silence was answer enough. Dr. Hyojin's examination of the Veltar population revealed the horrible truth. The hegemony leadership hadn't just enslaved other species, they had enslaved their own people first. Microscopic organisms implanted in Veltar children made them aggressive, territorial, and unable to feel empathy for other species. The parasites suppress the emotional centers of your brain, Dr. Hyojin explained to a room full of Veltar civilians. Without them, you're naturally cooperative, curious, and peaceful. Can you remove them? Dr. Velani asked. Our quantum medical technology can dissolve them harmlessly, Dr. Hyojin replied. But the choice has to be yours. What happened next shocked everyone, including the humans. Millions of Veltar volunteered for the procedure. When the parasites were removed, the change was dramatic. Veltar, who had been coldly efficient soldiers, became artists, scientists, and teachers. Their natural intelligence, no longer focused on conquest, turned to exploration and creation. Supreme Commander Graxtal, watching his empire crumble as his own people chose freedom over control, finally understood what he was truly fighting. You're not conquering us, he said quietly. You're liberating us. That was always the plan, Admiral Miran replied. Even you, Graxtal. The parasites in your system are different, older, more complex. They've been controlling you longer than anyone. For the first time in decades, Graxtal felt something other than anger or ambition. Fear, yes, but also something else. Hope? What happens to me? He asked. That depends on what you choose to become, Admiral Miran said. The beings who taught us quantum consciousness manipulation also taught us about redemption. Even the worst actions can be healed if the person truly wants to change. The formal surrender of the hegemony happened not in a throne room or battlefield, but in a medical center on Vel Prime. Supreme Commander Graxtal, after having his control parasites removed, wept for the first time in his life as he truly understood what he had done. I destroyed so many worlds, he said to Dr. Hyojin. How can that ever be forgiven? Forgiveness isn't about forgetting, she replied. It's about choosing to build something better with the time you have left. The establishment of the new Galactic Accord took place on Haven Station, with representatives from every liberated species. But humanity didn't position itself as the new ruling power. Instead, they served as mediators and technological advisors. President Ji-Hoon Nam of the Restored Human Federation explained their philosophy to the gathered delegates. We learned something important during our exile. Power isn't about controlling others. It's about helping others control their own destinies. The Accord established several key principles. Every species had the right to develop according to their own nature. Technology would be shared freely among all members. No species could be forced to give up their unique abilities or cultural practices. Most importantly, any conflicts would be resolved through cooperation, not conquest. But the real test of the new order came when reports arrived of hegemony holdout forces in distant systems. Some military units, cut off from communication, were still following old orders to suppress rebellions. Do we destroy them? Asked Commander Taehyun Oh. No, Admiral Miran said firmly. We heal them. The campaign to reach the last hegemony forces became a rescue mission rather than a military operation. Human ships appeared not to attack, but to offer the same choice that had been given to everyone else. Continue fighting a war that no longer existed, or join the effort to repair the damage that war had caused. Most surrendered immediately when they learned what had really happened. The few who refused were simply relocated to uninhabited systems where they could live peacefully without harming others. The final scene of the Great Liberation took place on a world that had been strip-mined to bare rock by hegemony industrial operations. Engineer Seiram Young led a team of humans and aliens working together to restore the planet's ecosystem. The quantum environmental processors are ready, she reported to the mixed species team around her. Crystal resonance patterns are optimized, chimed Azurth. Scientist, energy flow mapping is complete, announced a Nulani engineer. Biological seed patterns are prepared, added a Kethra biologist who had chosen to work with life instead of destroying it. When they activated the restoration system, something magical happened. Dead soil became fertile earth. Poisoned water became crystal clear. The atmosphere, toxic from decades of industrial abuse, slowly cleared as new plants began growing at accelerated rates. Children from a dozen different species ran through the newly green fields, playing together in ways their parents had never thought possible. Veltar youngsters, free from the parasites that had made their elders aggressive, laughed and shared toys with Kethra workers who experienced individual joy for the first time. Admiral Miran Jang stood watching the scene from a hillside, Captain Dai-Ho Kim beside her. In the distance, ships from every member species of the new Galactic Accord worked together on restoration projects. Do you think it will last? Dai-Ho asked. Nothing lasts forever, Miran replied. But we've taught them something important.